Let's be clear about something right up front. What you're about to see isn't just a history lesson. Not really. It's the deconstruction of a blueprint, a meticulously engineered plan for annihilation that was tested in the deserts of Utah, perfected by chemists at Harvard, and then unleashed from the sky to literally erase cities from the map. This is the story of how America, faced with the failure of its most advanced weapon, created a new kind of hell on Earth, and, in the process, redefined the rules of war forever.
Just imagine this for a second. You're an emergency coordinator in Tokyo. Your hand is shaking so violently you can barely write in your logbook. Outside, the world is ending. The very air you breathe is on fire. Those 6 words, the rain is on fire, they capture a moment where reality just completely broke. It's a moment that shattered all propaganda, a moment that signaled the beginning of the end for Imperial Japan.
And you have to understand, we're not talking about a city of steel and concrete like Berlin, no. Tokyo, especially the old Shitamachi district, was a tinderbox waiting for a match. You had over 1 million people packed into homes made of wood, bamboo, and paper screens, at a density of over 100,000 people per square mile. They'd been told they were safe, that American bombers could never reach them. They were so wrong.
So to understand how we got to that night of fire, we have to back up a little and talk about a massive failure. See, the American war machine had produced this technological marvel, the B-29 Superfortress. It was the most advanced, most expensive bomber in the entire world. But by early 1945, the whole B-29 program, the absolute cornerstone of the Pacific Air War, was failing. And not just failing, it was failing spectacularly.
Here's the problem. They were flying at 30,000 feet to stay above Japanese fighters, but their accuracy was less than 5%. Bombs were just going everywhere. And the reason? A completely unknown weather phenomenon, the jet stream. Imagine trying to drop a bomb from 6 miles up into a 250-mile-per-hour river of wind you can't even see. It was impossible. And to make things worse, the brand-new R-3350 engines, the most powerful ever built, had this nasty habit of catching fire during the long, hard climb to altitude. I mean, get this. America was losing more of its super bombers to mechanical problems than they were to the Japanese. The entire strategy was collapsing.
Okay, so what do you do when your high-tech precision strategy is in ruins? Well, American planners turned to a different kind of science, a much darker, more elemental kind. They realized if they couldn't hit specific factories from 30,000 feet, maybe they could just burn down everything around those factories from 5,000 feet. And this wasn't some sudden, desperate idea. It was the result of years of cold, methodical research and development.
The process was just chillingly methodical. Step 1. Way back in 1942, a team at Harvard perfects this formula for jellied gasoline they call napalm. It was designed to stick to any surface and just burn for up to 30 minutes. Step 2. Standard Oil works with scientists to design the perfect delivery system, the M69 bomb. And then, Step 3, and this is the part that gets me, at Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, the U.S. Army built exact replicas of Japanese residential neighborhoods. I'm talking down to the tatami mats and paper doors, and they burned them to the ground. Over and over and over again, perfecting the technique.
Think about that for a second. Long before the main bombing campaign even really started, American analysts knew exactly how to create an unstoppable firestorm. They knew a single cluster bomb could set a 2,500 square foot area ablaze. They knew the napalm gel would splatter up to 100 feet. And most critically, they knew that water, which was the main Japanese firefighting tool, was useless. The burning gel would literally just float on the water and keep burning. The math of destruction was already complete.
All right, this is where the man who would put that blueprint into action enters the story, General Curtis LeMay. He takes command of the failing B-29 Forest in January 1945. LeMay was a ruthless, pragmatic problem solver. He looked at the data, the failed missions, the lost planes, and he realized the current strategy was a dead end. So he decided to throw out the entire rulebook and make one of the most audacious gambles of the entire war.
LeMay's plan, it violated everything bomber crews had been taught. First, he ordered most of the defensive guns and all that ammunition removed. Now this made the planes lighter, faster, able to carry way more bombs, but it also made them terrifyingly vulnerable. Second, he ordered them to attack at night, flying not at 30,000 feet, but at a dangerously low 5,000 to 7,000 feet, right into the teeth of light anti-aircraft fire. And finally, they would carry nothing but these new M69 incendiary bombs and fly all by themselves, not in those protective formations. It was a plan so radical, his own staff thought he was completely insane.
Let's just pause here for a second. Seriously,
Your country has spent billions on a superweapon that just isn't working. The war is dragging on, you're losing crews every single week. Would you bet everything on a single, desperate, all-or-nothing mission that defies all military logic? LeMay knew that if this failed, he'd be court-martialed for sure, but he also knew that doing nothing meant certain failure. What would you do?
And so, the stage was set. On the night of March 9, 1945, over 300 B-29s took off from the Mariana Highlands. Their target was a 12-square-mile rectangle right in the heart of Tokyo's most densely populated district. The crews had been briefed on LeMay's radical new tactics. They were flying low, they were flying slow, and they were basically defenseless, heading straight for the capital of the enemy. What happened next would surpass the destruction of Dresden, Hamburg, and yes, even in terms of immediate death, Hiroshima.
This quote from an American tail gunner, it just captures the surreal, horrifying beauty of the attack's first moments. The lead planes marked the target zone with a giant flaming axe of napalm. Then the main force followed. 500,000 individual M69 bomblets rained down. For a moment, it was silent, just like falling snow. And then the ground erupted. Thousands of small fires merged into rivers of fire and then into an ocean of flame.
1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, that's hot enough to melt aluminum and glass. This insane heat, combined with strong winds on the ground, created a phenomenon scientists call a firestorm. It's not just a big fire. The superheated air rises so violently it creates its own weather system, with hurricane-force winds at ground level that suck all the oxygen out of bomb shelters and just feed the flames. The rivers that people fled to for safety, they literally began to boil. It was a completely unsurvivable environment.
For the people on the ground, that temperature meant this. I saw a woman with a baby on her back burst into flames. This is the account of Haruo Nihei, who is just 8 years old. The heat was so intense that people would spontaneously combust from the radiant heat alone without even being touched by the flames. She survived only because her father threw himself on top of her, and their bodies were then shielded by the bodies of others who fell on top of them. Her testimony forces us to move beyond the statistics and really see the unimaginable human cost.
By the time the sun came up, the scale of the destruction was almost incomprehensible. Nearly 16 square miles of the city gone, incinerated, an official death toll of over 83,000, though the real number is likely way, way higher, as many bodies were simply vaporized. And in a single night, over 1 million people were made homeless, all from one raid, lasting less than 3 hours.
But here's the thing. The Tokyo raid on March 10th wasn't a one-off. It was just the beginning of the final phase of the air war. LeMay's gamble had paid off with horrifying efficiency, and now he had a proven blueprint for annihilation. The strategy shifted from single raids to a relentless, systematic campaign designed to break not just Japan's industry, but its very will to fight.
Just look at the pace of this. There was no time to recover, no time to regroup. The very next night after Tokyo burned, 285 B-29s hit Nagoya, the heart of Japan's aircraft industry. 2 days later, Osaka, the second-largest city. 3 days after that, the port of Kobe. Japan's major industrial cities were being wiped off the map one by one in a 10-day blitz that destroyed 32 square miles of urban Japan.
And the efficiency of the campaign only increased. By August, they had moved on to smaller, secondary cities. Take the city of Toyama, an aluminum production center. It was attacked on August 1st. 99.5% of the city was destroyed. What does that even mean? It means the city of Toyama basically ceased to exist in a single night. This was the terrifying perfection of industrial warfare.
Then, the Americans started using a new psychological weapon. They began dropping leaflets, warning cities that they were next on the list. Now, at first, people dismissed it as propaganda, but then the warnings started coming true. Can you imagine knowing with absolute certainty that your city would be burned to the ground in a few days, but being completely powerless to stop it? As the political scientist Dr. Masao Maruyama wrote, it changed the very concept of death. It wasn't a battle, it was an appointment. It felt like being processed.
So why does this story from so long ago still matter so much? Because the firebombing campaign didn't just end a war. It created a whole new paradigm for it. It fundamentally changed the rules of engagement, it blurred the lines between civilian and combatant, and it set the stage for the atomic age that was right around the corner.
There's a really common misconception that the atomic bombs were the deadliest attacks on Japan. The numbers, well, they tell a very different story. The conventional firebombing campaign across 66 cities killed somewhere between 330,000 and 900,000 people. The atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined killed around 226,000. The slow, grinding, relentless campaign of fire was far deadlier than the two bright flashes of nuclear light that we all remember.
And this is maybe the most chilling legacy of all. This is a quote from Robert McNamara. In 1945, he was the young statistical genius helping LeMay calculate the most efficient way to burn Japanese cities. Years later, as Secretary of Defense, he reflected on what they had done, quoting his old boss, General LeMay. It's a stunning admission that the line between a war hero and a war criminal can be as simple and as terrifying as who wins the war.
So in the end, the firebombing of Japan was so much more than a series of raids. It was a template. It was the blueprint. It demonstrated the terrifying power that you get when you combine a nation's full industrial might, its most advanced technology, and a willingness to operate in a moral gray area where civilian lives become part of a horrible, but some would argue necessary arithmetic.
And that leaves us right here, with this final, unsettling question. The men who planned these raids argued they saved millions of lives by preventing a bloody ground invasion of Japan. The survivors on the ground experienced something that felt like extermination. The campaign worked. It absolutely helped end the war. But it did so at a cost that continues to challenge our whole understanding of justice in wartime. So where do you draw that line? Where is it?